Good start straight into it.
Yeah, really nice clean start. There's a moment of real tension, isn't it? Still doesn't leave me. Years after competing here, that tension doesn't leave you. Just want to get the first few strokes underway cleanly, and then you're into the process. You've trained so many times with the start, haven't you?
Yeah. Once you're up and running, it's fine. It's just making sure you all move exactly the same on the first stroke. And here, straight away, Mortlake Anglian Alpha here, really quite cohesive unit, being really aggressive here out of the blocks as you expect. You see the boys there behind them, not quite onto the booms yet.
Yeah, so quite a punchy start, quite a punchy style they've got, Adrian. You've got a real good eye as a coach and an expert in some of this. Let's see what you can make of the style between the two crews here. I can see a bit of a contrast myself. Yeah,
Tom Copeland has been coaching the Cantabs for quite a few years now. He's developed quite a loose and languid style with the Cantabs girls. And like you said, the Mortlake Anglian is slightly more physical, isn't it? They seem to be more aggressive through the middle third. They've got a slight lead for it at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. So you said slightly more sort of fluid style on this side and more punchy on the far side. We see there the Cantabs crew, and it's the Cox Callum Mantell who's urging his women now to kind of move from that accelerated start phase into the rhythm they'll need in the middle of the course using that languid style.
Yeah, and here, even at this point, probably a minute and a bit into it, Mortlake Anglian out to about half a length or so lead. The transition now is going to be quite crucial. You can see there's quite a bit of wind, so the race is going to take a long time. So finding your rhythm is going to be key now.
Yeah, for my money, I think, you know, Mortlake Anglian moved off quite well off the start, but now they're being held by Cantabrigian, and maybe they had that explosive power. We could see it in the shoulders of these women through this 8 here. Really kind of a punchy stroke. Quite an aggressive front end, quite an aggressive style through that crew.
Yeah, and it's the crews can be explosive and powerful, but not have a cruise, and some crews are the other way around. So we'll just see whether Mortlake Anglian still looking like they're moving slightly. I mean, they're not taking as much out of it as they did at the beginning. But Cantabs really, there's that whole thing. They're at a dangerous point now. They can't really let Mortlake get much further, because then you start to lose contact, and then it's a difficult thing to come back.
Yeah, that's right. So Cantabs are going to need to probably expend a bit more energy here, while Mortlake Anglian and Alpha can think about transitioning into a sustainable rhythm with more confidence. So these women have to start attacking, as I mentioned, Callum Mantell sitting in the Cox's Street seat there, age 30. He's a fluid mechanics engineering consultant, and fluid mechanics is really what these women need.
Yeah, they need to get this right, exactly. And just as we're going down here, seeing these two crews, you can see that Mortlake, the blade work is pretty precise when they're going into the water, and they're still rowing really nicely together, and you can see why they've got that extra 3/4 of a length lead or so. You know, we're quite flippant, aren't we? We talk about length, but a length in a single is not the same thing as a length in an 8. A length in 8 is a very long way.
18 meters, I think.
Exactly right.
Be precise about it, yeah.
And in terms of, and because the 8s have such high speed, it's very difficult to change the boat speed. So actually, a length is a very difficult thing to gain, because you have to, so much power needs to go into change the momentum, whereas in a single, you don't need to put so much into it.
So one other thing about these crews, Adrian, that's interesting, these are what we would call scratch crews. This is the battle of the scratch crews. Both crews have come together just for Henley. They don't have a racing history as a crew, although the athletes may have raced in different combinations. And what pressure does that put on you if you're in a crew that hasn't raced together previously?
Yeah, because I guess the people come with different styles from wherever they've rowed before, so trying to blend them together quite quickly, and sometimes it can work very quickly, and sometimes it's just something that just can't be fixed in a few weeks. It needs a winter to bed in and change the way they think. And when they get tired under pressure, they'll start diverging from what the unified style is to what they did before.
Well, credit to Cantabrigian here, because it looks to me like they're still managing to hold on with some contact just about as we come up to the middle part of the race. We're coming up to the Foley marker, which is just before halfway, and the question is whether they can hold that sort of lead and the coherence that you were talking about there, or whether as the fatigue sets in, the sort of crew starts to come apart a little bit, and maybe there's an opportunity.
Yeah, and I guess it's easier as well when you're ahead, isn't it, at this stage? And Mortlake Anglian are thinking what we've done is working. Actually, we can see what they're going to do. We can respond to their efforts and their pushes, and actually, considering they're quite a new crew, it's pretty cohesive. They've done a very good job of that, actually.
Yeah, nice job of blending. And Mortlake Anglian and Alpha themselves as a blended club, I was just looking at their history, which is really really fascinating. 1877 Mortlake was founded, 1878 was Anglian, and then Alpha, a women's club, was founded in 1927. The three have been bolted together, as this 8 has been bolted together down there in Chiswick, ready for this race. And, well, credit to Cantabs again. They continue to kind of stay in contact. I still like that style that they've got. Maybe it will pay off for them.
It does look like they're starting to make a move now. You're right. They really are starting to gain some momentum now. And there's still plenty of course to go. I mean, we're still looking down the course. They're still quite a long way away. And you're right. That key thing, they didn't lose contact. and the pressure now shifts a little bit onto Mortlake as Cantab seem to be generating a bit more momentum. It's going to be fascinating down here.
Well, this is the time, this third quarter of the race as we pass the Remnant Club, where so many races are decided, and this is the time you absolutely have to attack. You'd expect Cantabs now to be really calling for the push. If you're in the bows of this crew, Rebecca Dell and Breonna Sykes sitting there in the bow pair of that Cantabs crew will be calling, yelling to their mates so they can see some headway being made. They can see that they're taking back some seats, and they really are shifting, Aidan.
They really are starting to make a move, and like you said, when you're in the bows, you can feel it, and the people in the stern still feel detached from the race. So you're right, saying something and motivating them. And this is where the Cox has to really communicate clearly that actually what they're doing and the languid rhythm they've had, maybe they've cost them less effort to get to here at the speed, and maybe they've got something now to continue with.
So we're looking at the face of Rosanna Barraclough, 23 years of age, sitting in the stroke seat of that Cantabs crew with Amanda Clarkson, 45, in the 7th seat. So there's some real experience in the boat, as well as Emily Wilkes at 6, Laura D'Urso at 5, Eleanor Darlington at 4, Nicola Bocciana at 3, Breonna Sykes at 2, and as we mentioned, Rebecca Dell at down. They're still trying to move. They
are, and Cantabs still seem to be keeping contact. It's hard to tell from here whether they've made much more ground, but the race is still on here, and Mortlake, they can absorb some of the pressure, but they really can't let the momentum shift onto Cantab's side. So we'll see in the last minute and a half here what happens.
Yeah, so 2/3 of the Mortlake Anglian and Alpha crew did race together in the women's head. It's a longer kind of race format, so they've got some kind of pattern to train together, and maybe that's what's going to pay now, because we're into the final phase. Everything's burning, everything's hurting, and the question is, can you keep it together? Is it time for one last attack? At the mile and the 8 signal as we go through, we had a C on the marker. Up goes the number 1 for Mortlake Anglian and Alpha. Where's the number 2? Is it going to be showing an overlap? Difficult to read.
We can't see it from the screen, yeah, but it does feel like Cantabs need to make some sort of really consolidated effort now to make a really big impact. The course is running out, and Mortlake are doing a good job. It's down to just 2/3 of a length on the progress board.
I can see out of the window, Adrian, that number 2 marker is showing an overlap. There's about a 2/3 of a length advantage that Mortlake Anglian and Alpha have got. So a final attack. They've got the last 200 metres of this race. The stewards' enclosure is packed with rowing fans, and you can hear their appreciation and excitement rising, calling for both of these crews in the final phase.
Yeah, and look like Mortlake seem to have this under control, but let's see if Cantabs can really drag something out. And fair credit to both these crews, have raced this all the way to the line. 2 scratch crews doggedly fighting to the end.
It's a real story of determination in both crews through this. There's overlap here still for Cantabs, but it's not going to be enough overlap. We've got the last 10 or 12 strokes to go now until the finish line.
Yeah, looks like Mortlake Anglian Alpha have got this, although they are struggling now, and Cantabs really are still coming back, but it's just too little too late, I fear.
Mortlake Anglian and Alpha cross the line first. It's almost just over half a length. What a recovery from Cantabs. They really came back really quite strongly in that final third of the race, and you can see they pushed Mortlake Anglian and Alpha really, really hard. Oh,
that was fantastic. They doggedly fought it. They almost got clear water down, and Cantabs came back to half a length. That's the kind of race you want when you're watching the regatta.
So it's hotting up here at Henley. You can see the sun's out. It's quite close. It's quite sweaty here, and the racing is getting closer and hotter too.